to be the man, you gotta beat the man.
Shadows sleeping in the dead of night. I light the match, they feel my fight. Street I flicker like a war zone flare. They see me rise, but they won't dare. So many cracks under my stride. Whispers chase me, they collide. I've got dreams heavy like gold chains. Every sorrow that screams my name. Be legendary, feel the fire in your chest. No second guessing.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to another new episode number 24 to be precise, of the Hoosier Legends Conference Weekly podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Spears, joined as always by Mr. Mike Walden. Mike, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
It's finally starting to warm up again. These last 2 days have been brutal. So it's nice. We're supposed to have like 70-degree weather on Friday. So I'm really looking forward to the weekend. How about you, Coach?
Oh, man, amen to that. Boys golf coach here. Window opened on Monday, but I did not open a window because it was, as you said, brutal, and we did not get a chance to even talk about or discuss or do anything golf related. Finally today, I did have my rules meeting with the boys, and I think we're all set to go with tryouts tomorrow and Friday. Unfortunately, I just don't have the facilities and resources to provide my boys with the chance to be able to do much, swinging indoors, no simulator, we don't have cages that are rated, for hitting into nets with golf balls. So, I just told them, I'm like, hey guys, get on a simulator, get into an indoor facility. Thankfully, some of my guys do have that, access and memberships to indoor facilities and stuff like that. But we're gonna try to get some stuff rolling here over the next couple of years, where maybe we can get a couple of simulators on campus and help out with some of that stuff. So we're kind of anxiously awaiting that. We need some things to kind of fall our way fundraising wise and whatnot. But I know a couple of surrounding schools have some of those facilities, and I know they probably took advantage of those on Monday and Tuesday because nobody was outdoors. That's for sure. So.
Hey, Coach, you ever see that movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, The Gridiron Gang?
Yes.
I'm waiting for like Disney to come out with that type of movie for golf. Even tennis. Those are two of those country club sports that we talk about, and one of the reasons why it's a country club sport is it takes money to be able to play those sports. I feel like I don't know, when you probably have a better pulse on it than I do. When's the last time a school or an individual, one state that wasn't from, a quote unquote, like rich school? Do we know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, you look at your perennials, in golf, and I'm sure we talk a lot with Coach Walkie, our boys and girls tennis coach at Tri-West, that, yeah, I mean, you've got your blue bloods, right? It's pretty much your, like you said, country club communities, affluent suburbs. It's kind of weird because every now and then you'll see maybe an individual come in from a school in and around a community, because obviously, like you said, the other aspect to that too is, for the most part, we are maybe a little bit more immune to like the transfer type thing. Now, that's not to say that kids don't move for that reason, but like if you're a good golfer, I'm just going to spitball here and say, at a small school up north, somewhere in between like, South Bend and Fort Wayne, are you going to be, in an exponentially better position if you move to Mishawaka Marion or one of the Fort Wayne schools? Maybe. But if you're in one of the more rural schools, you're still probably going to be playing a lot of those schools because, again, with class system and stuff like that, it doesn't impact golf as much as it would with some of those other sports like soccer, baseball, certainly football and basketball. I think you do see, though, a lot of consolidation of talent. Zionsville, Carmel, Garin, Westfield. That's Murderers Row up there, and they pretty much all go to the same sectional. And so, that makes it difficult in that regard. And I know Coach Walkie's talked about that with tennis as well. So, yeah, it can happen. You can get a one-off somewhere and get somebody who, can shine as an individual, or maybe get a couple of guys on the same team together that get a good run. And that's what I told my boys today. As a matter of fact, I was going over season goals with them. And, I said, look, here are our metrics. And I had finished in the upper half of regional. And that was the last goal that I had, because you got to be realistic, right? And I said, guys, I have a really good feeling that we can win sectional again. We can be competitive. There's good teams there. It's not a given. It's not a cakewalk. We're going to have to earn it. But if we get the regional, that's where it just, like I said, Westfield, Zionsville, Carmel, Garin, Brownsburg, even some of Lafayette schools are pretty solid programs as well. If we finish in the upper half there, I'm ecstatic about that. We've hit all of our season goals because, that's just the reality of it. We're going to run into those buzzsaws. So, I think it's exciting, to be able to still be competitive without some of the assets and resources that other schools have. But I also understand the direction where things are going. And, we're going to have to get creative with getting some funds in the books and kind of hopefully go from there. So.
Okay, so I looked up the 2025 state finals. Going down from first place to 18th place: Westfield, Homestead, Noblesville, Zionsville, Evansville North, Carmel, Center Grove, Castle, Hampton Southeastern, Cathedral, Fort Wayne Bishop Dwenger, South Bend St. Joseph, Elkhart, Floyd Central, Leo, Lake Central, Franklin Community, Bloomington South.
Yep.
Now, does any of those scream out to you like poor?
No.
Inner city, rural? You know what I mean? Like, any of those schools really jump out to you? I will say that, St. Joseph, South Bend St. Joseph is like a 3A school typically. But I think all those other schools are 5A or larger. And the vast majority of them, if not all of them, I feel like are very affluent. Now, when I look at the individual, I will say tied for second place, and it kind of hurts my soul to say this, is a Gibson Southern kid, Peyton Blackard. And listen, like, Gibson Southern is just one of those schools that always beat Tri-West in like sectionals or regionals or semi-state. They're so good. So, it's just kind of one of those things. But it goes Westfield, Gibson Southern, Evansville North, Zionsville, Westfield, Dwenger, Castle. It's just Westfield. It's all over the place.
Right.
And there's just not a lot of schools in there where you're like, oh, I wouldn't see that kid from there, except that Gibson Southern, who did, like, it's kind of like what you said, has like a one-off. But man, there's a Twin Lakes kid that finished tied for 76, but, an Eastbrook kid in there. But it is very much a, have and have nots type of sport. And we talked about that probably with swimming as well. When Carmel's won, 40 in a row for girls swimming, and in boys, it's like 20s or 30s now.
Yeah.
That's another country club sport where, you have to be around and you have to pay thousands of dollars, assumingly, to do year-round swimming club. And then, when you're that dominant, you're going to have people move in from all across the country to swim for Carmel, because that's a good feeder program to USA Olympics.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I've went on and on about this in the past, so I apologize to all of our listeners. But if you have a team sport award, you should class it. Plain and simple. Individual and track and all of these sports can still be an individual. Winner take all. It's fine. 1A player versus 6A player. I get it. But team sports, the team award needs to be split up small school, large school. I just think it's not the IHSAA, but it is somebody who runs it. That's all they do is say, okay, in football, if you're 4, 5, or 6 class, you're in the large school. If you're 1, 2, or 3, you're in small school. And they run an indoor state championship event, and either you're large school or small school. It's that easy. You know, like, I don't understand why the IHSAA cannot do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy to me. So
yeah, for sure.
I just think it's one of the many things that can be fixed in the state. And like I said, you know, if you're a great golfer out there and you think that you can coach with the best of them, go coach a school that needs that. You know, like Tri-West, we have an awful golf coach, so it'd be nice to have a good one.
Horrible.
Obviously, I think you do a really good job, but you know, we talked about Brownsburg, and they have, you know, they spend $1 million on golf simulators. There's no way a rural school like us could ever even imagine affording something like that. You know, we have to rely on places like Divot, who have indoor simulators, or parents who are willing to spend $3,000, you know, to get a golf simulator and put it in their basement or garage or whatever it is. That's the only way that our guys can do anything, you know?
Yeah. It's, and you know, for me, it's one of those things where it's just a guilt factor, I think, that weighs on me. I know that we've got a good amount of kids on our roster this year who are lucky enough and fortunate enough to have access to that, but I just feel bad that I feel like they have to do it on their own, right? Like, I feel like I should be providing that, because I do see schools in and around the community, you know, even schools that aren't the size and have the resources as big as, you know, like Brownsburg is. There's other schools like Webo has simulators now. Because they had somebody who, you know, saw the need and was affluent enough to be able to help out and contribute that, you know. And so they've got that, and I believe, you know, kind of like a putting green area to work on indoors. So, you know, I mean, it's something that we're going to work on. You know, we're gonna kind of get together and look at some ways. I think one thing we're going to try to maybe do is you know, host a camp over the summer, skills youth camp, and that'll help generate some funds beyond just our normal fundraiser that we do before the season. You know, unfortunately, we're not in a position, although I guess I'll be completely honest, I've never really approached it, but I don't think it would go over very well where I could host an invite. You know, I know a lot of clubs, teams will generate enough money to sustain their program just on holding a weekend invite. But again, we've got Brownsburg does one, Danville does one, Bethesda's jumped in and is doing one. And, you know, again, I don't know with our course, you know, how open they would be to having a weekend to shut down the course for at least half a day for it. But I know a lot of schools do that to raise money to run their program. And, you know, we're going to work on it. We're going to try to get it, but I'm excited. You know, I talked to our AD this morning, and I kind of said, you know, if we can have the kind of season that I think we can, you know, I think it's another kind of notch in our belt to say we did it without all the other additives that others have, you know, and it can be done. You have to be a little creative with it and grind where you can, and we're looking forward to it. So we'll get out there hopefully tomorrow and Friday. And, you know, one other thing I would say too, while we're on this topic, Mike, and I know it's kind of off a little bit from what we've talked about, but, you know, we obviously talk about all different sports here on the show, you know, and I've told people I've had the privilege of being able to coach, you know, 2 sports in particular of the few, I think, that have to make cuts. You know, basketball, typically, you know, you have to cut some kids depending on how many come out. And then with golf, you know, I've got 23 young men who are going to come out, and I've got 15 spots in total between varsity and JV. And I might be able to, depending on the way scores come in, be able to keep a couple of kids as like practice players. We're going to look at that and see if that's an option, because I want kids to stay engaged. I want them to stay excited. But I'm telling you, it is by far the most difficult thing, in my opinion, of being a coach is telling a young a man or woman that they can't do what it is that they love to want to do. Obviously, they're trying it and everything. And but the one thing I told those kids today is I will absolutely talk to them face to face and let them know, right, whether they've made the squad or not and why. And I think we owe that to them so that they know. And I know when I tried out for golf at Brownsburg and got cut, the coach at the time posted the roster on a wall, and if your name wasn't there, you just moved on. And I think you owe it to these guys that are coming out and put risk in a little bit. They're putting themselves out there. They're vulnerable a little bit. It's like you owe it to them, right, to do that. So not something that I look forward to, but looking forward to having the team set and getting started. Of course, it's about the time we get started. We've got spring break thrown in there on us and everything, but I'm looking forward to getting going here. So,
hey, Coach, talking about that, it's something about for golf. They kind of cut themselves, don't they, when it comes to scores? When you have those practices, or are you looking more than just scores?
Yeah, that's a great question. Scores are going to be, and I told them this, that's kind of the primary, the cornerstone, the baseline. Obviously, that's where I'm starting, right? But I do look at things such as what class are you in? I'm going to look at the scores of a freshman, a little bit different than a junior. And then you start factoring in, have you played for the program? If you have been with the program for, as again, a junior for your first 2 years, and, your scores are, kind of even with somebody who hasn't played before, I'm probably going to give the nod to the player who's been with the program. It really kind of and this is the position that I was in when I tried out at Brownsburg, right? I was a baseball player my freshman and sophomore year, and then my back was bothering me catching, pitching, and just for whatever reason, I thought maybe it wouldn't hurt as bad, playing golf, because it's not as intense on the lower back, which is where I was really having a lot of my pain. And so I went out and tried out, and for having not played before as a junior, I basically had to be in the top 3, which I knew I wasn't going to make, but I still went ahead and tried it anyway. So, you have to factor in some things like that, because you want younger kids in, getting the nod over somebody who hasn't played before, because you're going to have them for longer as a coach and you want to develop them. So I do look at that. And then I'll be honest with you too, Mike, I factor in character. I factor in how are you as a student, in the classroom, in the building. I'm in the building with these kids. And so even though I may not have them in class, I know their reputation. I can easily talk to other teachers. And, if you're somebody who's going to stir up trouble, or, I told them today in the rules meeting, I said, guys, this game is about honor and integrity. And it honors that. And if you're going to even think about trying to cheat, you're gone. I'm not going to put up with that. That's just something I won't, and I know the temptation is there. It's pressure, whether you're trying to make the squad or you're trying to, compete for a spot. The pressure's there. The temptation is there. But if we catch wind that you're doing anything like that, you're done. We don't put up with that. And so I try to send that message to him today as well. So I want high integrity guys. I'm trying to build a culture. I said, look, I understand it's golf, but at the end of the day, this is a varsity sport. It's an IHSA sport. We are building a culture here of what it means to be a Bruin. And that's kind of our motto within the program is, what does it mean to be a Bruin? Because you represent the high school, you represent the golf program, you're out in the community. It's one of those sports where we're not isolated on campus. We're out in the community. We've got people that are golfing at the golf course that are looking at us and making judgments, right or wrong, about who we are as, a team, as high schoolers, as, players. And so we put a lot of emphasis on making sure we've got good quality guys on the team as well. So definitely throw that in there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Coach. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Since we're already talking about this, do you mind kind of going over the conference and who you're thinking is going to make a run for the conference championship this year? Are you prepared for that? Or what kind of players each school's coming back? Have you looked into that very much?
Yeah, and that's something that I talked to the boys about today, because we've got that goal. That's one of our goals, win conference. The thing that we kind of are faced with going into this, 6 teams, we'll add 2 more next year with Greenwood and Shelbyville, obviously, which I know Shelbyville's had a pretty good pedigree in the golf world. I told the guys, I was like, look, Triton, they've shown us across the board in the first 2 seasons, they got athletes out there. So I don't know much about their golf program. Somebody that I was talking to, it was one of their coaches at the coaches clinic, said that they've got a farmer out there who has basically built like a range. And if anyone's from the Triton Central area and hears this, correct me if I'm wrong, but they basically have like a farmer that has a bunch of land that built like a driving range and has like a putting green and chipping area and whatnot for the kids to be able to use when the course, I guess, whatever their home course is, doesn't allow for them to be out there. They can go out there and practice. And so, I know they've probably got some resources. Indian Creek seems like the kind of community, right, that would have, maybe some country club type athletes and some golfers. So I would imagine they have a pretty strong program. We see Monrovia a couple of times. Beech Grove and Speedway are all going to be competitive. And so, I think across the board, it's going to be a challenge for us. We knew what we had in the Sagamore going in and year out because we competed against those guys so often, which I kind of like the fact, right, that we may not have those preconceived ideas going in. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to be competitive. We return everybody in the top 3 or 4 that I can see coming in this year, and a couple of new additions, a freshman, and then a couple kids who are coming over to play for the first time this year that I think are going to help us. Of course, we don't know what those slots are going to look like, but we know we got some deep numbers, and that's always a good thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about making cuts, and I kind of made that comment about they kind of cut themselves, I appreciate you going into the character and kind of getting to know the kid and holding them accountable too. I know talking to great coaches who run great programs, they hold their kids accountable. There's this no, hey, if you have, a detention or if you are failing a class, you're not going to play. And then all of a sudden it's your star player and you're like, okay, we need you. You're going to play. That doesn't happen. Like great programs, great leaders, they hold that line. And all those kids, they rise to that occasion. They don't fall behind. And I think most programs need to start following that a little bit more. When we were talking about that coaching experience, and I have coaching experience in the track and field, and I feel like that's where I kind of got that, hey, they kind of cut themselves. Like it's pretty easy in track and field because there are no cuts necessarily. There's obviously cuts for like varsity or JV, but their times don't lie. You know what I mean? We can time them, we can throw, we can jump, and that's your number, and every kid, we really focus on all the little things to make sure that they are at their peak when it's coming to, conference, and then when it's coming to sectionals. So that's when we're hoping that their PR is hitting, is in those big meets. But it's pretty simple, In those meets, you get 2 people, who are consistently your top 2 guys. Now, if there's a 2 and a 3, that's like back and forth. Obviously, you're kind of like, okay, this is going to be a hard decision who's going to play and who's not. But typically, you have one that is a standout in that event, and then the second person is a little bit behind them, and then the third, we hope, is right there, and they're competing every single day to get better. So it's a little bit different. And I don't know how any of these track programs are. Coach, and I'm going to be honest, when I'm talking to you right now, I'm having a brain fart, and it's the worst time. Who is it Ella? What is the girl's name from Indian Creek who just won state in cross country? Nybert,
Nybert.
right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Assumingly, and I don't know anything about it, assumingly she's going to run long distance for Indian Creek's track and field program. Maybe not. She wrestles, so she might be a softball player too. You never know. She's just
Right.
seems like to be an all sports, all amazing at everything she does. But if she does run long distance, I think Indian Creek is going to have a real big advantage there because her and the other lady, Brave, was really good too in our conference. So they'll probably be first and second. But I don't know the rest of the teams of how they're going to compete and how well they're going to be. When I'm looking at indoor track, I've kind of mentioned it earlier in our conversation about small school and large school. We don't have a lot of representation in indoor track. Anybody in our conference, I do see an occasional Indian Creek in there, but that's about it. I know Tri-West does have some indoor track meets, but they're not ranking in the top 50. We talked about Noah Greenwood before from Indian Creek. He's in the top 50 when it comes to 3,200 meters, and that has to be awful. No offense, but this is a 200-meter track. So when you're thinking of how long is it going to take to run 1,600, in a normal track, that's 4 laps. Well, now you have 8 laps. So when you're thinking of a 3,200, that used to be 8 laps. Now it's 16 laps. You know what I'm saying? Like 16 circles. That's got to be hard, especially like to figure out when are you going to kick and your timing and everything. But as I look through here too, Triton Central has Zeke Robertson in the top. I think he's number 5 right now in small school state in the hurdles. So there are some kids here in our conference representing indoor track, and I believe the state championship for that is coming up here in a couple weeks. Do you know, Coach?
Yes, I believe that's right. I thought I saw something with that, but yes, that sounds right. I think it is coming up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, because it usually falls around our spring break.
Open, yeah.
So I know in the past some kids, even if they've made it, have chosen to go on spring break instead. And I've talked to a lot of kids from other schools. They don't even run indoor. They take that time off because they just got off basketball or, they're doing something else, and then they'll just go to outdoor track. So, I think it's going to be pretty competitive. I don't think Tri-West is going to, be in that top 3 or 4. There'll probably be about, 4, 5, or 6. We'll see, though. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's been some surprises of kids coming out. I do expect a state champion, though. What is her name? Kylie Regalado. I think she has a really good chance of winning small school state in probably either the 200 and the long jump.
Yeah, sounds like
it. I know she's number 7 in the state in the 60 meters at 8 flat, and a girl from Fairfield runs a 7.64, so that's a pretty significant time difference in 60 meters. Libby Dowdy is number 1 for Indian Creek. So I think I was saying Nyberg. It's actually
I was just going to tell you. I looked it up, and yes, I couldn't remember who the other girl was. That was a really good distance runner, and that it was Libby.
I sincerely apologize for that. No, seriously, you work really hard. People should know your name. Maddie Rummel from Indian Creek is number 3 in the 60 hurdles in small school, so she can come out there with the state championship. She's a little bit farther behind, even if she is 3, but you never know. You never know what can happen in these big events. And as I'm looking through here, I wanted to see where Kylie Regalado was when it comes to the long jump, because she might be ranked number 1. If you can just bear with me, I'm almost there. And as I look, she is not in the top. There she is, number 17,
Okay.
16 feet.
Mhm.
And the top is 17.8. Holy smokes.
Man.
That is a far, far jump.
Yeah, it is.
Kylie's best is a 17.65.
Mhm.
Like lifetime best. So
Right.
she can do it, but right now it's just on 16 feet. So it'd be interesting to see how she does.
Yeah. No, that's exciting, and I know it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have Coach Spence on from our the Tri-West boys baseball program next week. He, I believe, is going to bring a player along with him to talk a little bit about baseball preview. Coach Spence has been around in the area for a long time, Hendricks County area. He's a Brownsburg grad, played there, and has now been leading the Tri-West program for about the last 4 years or so, and is pretty well established again in the baseball community. So he'll come in and be able to talk to us a little bit about not only just the preview of the Tri-West season, but also just a little bit maybe more of a sneak peek at the baseball side of things for the HLC as well. And again, ADs, coaches, players, if you're catching this and you'd love to come on the show with us, reach out to us, let us know. We'll always try to reach out to, and would love to hear whether you're in season, out of season. We want to kind of continue to have more of that voice of the athlete and coach on to get different perspectives on things of what's going on with sports. And so we would love to be able to do that. So that's a nice little bit of a preview there for some golf and track. Mike, I thought we would also use this episode too, since we took a little bit of time off here in between with sectionals and regionals. Now we're at the semi-state for boys basketball. We have an HLC representative that is still alive and kicking, man. The Triton Central Tigers, these guys under Coach James, we've talked about it all season long. Of course, seeing them in the HLC. We at Tri-West saw them, pretty early on. We kind of said, hey, this team looks like they might be a team to contend with. And here they are, still alive and trying to survive and advance. But thought we'd maybe just kind of go over the results here of what we saw with HLC teams that entered into postseason play and take a look at how things shook out for these guys. So we'll save Triton Central for last. Mike, if you want, I'll kick us off with Tri-West. If you want to kind of go from there, you can do Monrovia, and then I'll do Speedway. You can do Beech Grove, and we'll just kind of alternate. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'll try and keep up, Coach.
All right. Well, the Tri-West Bruins entered into sectional 25 play up at Frankfurt. And this one, we knew it was going to be a tough draw here. Sectional 25 has some really good talent in it. And so when you take a look at how things went down for this sectional here, Tri-West drew Brebeuf Jesuit in the first round, and then would go on to play Lebanon if they won. But unfortunately, Brebeuf, man, I think they kind of flew under the radar. Everyone kind of looked at Guerin as the odds-on favorite in this sectional. And so the Bruins unfortunately dropped that opening round matchup to Brebeuf, who was the eventual sectional champion. They would go on to play Guerin and win in a nail-biter 48-47. But for the Bruins, just kind of and how it is for a lot of these schools, just a tough luck of the draw there to get, a team that was playing really good basketball coming in to the sectional, going back and looking at their schedule. They had won going in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row, and 10 out of their last 11. Their only loss was to Guerin, and they avenged that obviously in the sectional championship, winning 48-47. They ran into Cathedral and dropped a close contest to the Irish 67-69 in that regional. So, again, you hate saying this because it sounds like you're, making excuses or just trying to make people feel better. It's not. I mean, but you ran into a buzzsaw. And again, it wasn't an awful season for the Bruins. That a winning record at 14-10. It was a tough schedule. I mean, you're talking, at one point when you look here, you're playing Jeff, Evansville North. You've got Brownsburg, Avon, Garin, McCutcheon, Pendleton Heights. That was a 4-game streak, a 5-game streak in there in which you went 1-4. But again, tough schedule to play through. The boys played hard up until the end. And the one thing that I would, mention as well, just I'm sure other schools in the HLC have heard by now, but coaching change coming for the Bruins here as Coach Tommy Strine resigns after the season is over there with that loss in sectional. And a new coach will be hired here pending board approval as one of his assistants, Kyle Martin, will be slated to take over. I'm sure he'll get that board approval at the next board meeting. Sounds like he's a community guy, has some kids in the community. And so, hopefully he'll be able to bring some stability to a program, which, as we've talked about in numerous years now, another coach coming through on the coaching carousel. When you go back and you look here, Coach Adam Bontrager, who's now an assistant principal at the middle school. He was the longest tenured coach in the last 15 years. You now have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coaches come through here, which makes it difficult to get some cohesiveness and kind of get things settled in. So hopefully this will be the guy, and hopefully the community will be patient, and we'll maybe have to take some lumps here. We'll see. I don't know what's coming up the pipeline. Hopefully guys stay on board. We don't see a lot of transfer outs or things of that nature with the day and age that we're in. But certainly, hoping that Coach Martin can bring in some stability and have some success for the Bruins there. So with that, we'll throw it on over to the Bulldogs.
Hey, actually, I'm going to throw a curveball and do Speedway. So
yeah, go right ahead.
Apologize for that. They were the first ones to come up. The spark plugs, I think we can just say it was kind of one of those seasons where we didn't know what spark plug team was going to show up. They end up being 11-11 overall. They lost that first game in the sectionals to Indianapolis, Washington. But the thing that threw me off about this is that they only scored 39 points, right? You can get up to Washington. Maybe they had a really stifling defense, but them and Shelbyville were the only ones that really kept them under 50 points. Like, you go through the schedule, you see some 70-point games there, almost eclipsing 80 points a couple times. And then you kind of look more into the details, and they lost against Triton Central on February 27th by 1 point. And we just talked about how Triton Central is now playing at the semi-state, and it was a 1-point game for them. And then you look a little bit closer in Martinsville, another 1-point game that they lost. And then they lost another game early in the season to Beech Grove, a conference opponent, by 3 points. And it's just one of those times where, 11-11, you're like, ugh, that was kind of like a 500 season. Not sure if that was really good. But those 3 games, right? And now you're looking at 14-8. So, and then, you might look at being second in the conference now. You just never knew who was going to show up for those spark plugs and how that team was going to be. But the one person that you can almost guarantee was going to show up was Drew Metallic. He ended up averaging 25 points a game. He shot almost 60% from the field goal range. I think he led the team in rebounds. He was just all over the place, and he's one kid that you can always count on the offense and on defense to do what is needed. So they got some stuff to work on. They need to be a little bit more balanced, I think, next year, and being able to be that same team each and every night. But I think they got lots of that foundation set for next year. Good coach, and we just hope that Speedway can keep moving on and keep up, not get their heads down, right? Not be upset by an 11-11 season.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, Coach 1L moving in down there. We interviewed him preseason, kind of got his thoughts on, what to expect there. And so, yeah, hopefully, again, they can build off of that a little bit. It's, not a complete wash of a season. And so, yeah, you just try to hopefully build some momentum off of that and look forward to your off-season work and hopefully getting better there. I'll go ahead and do Monrovia here, take the Bulldogs and take a look at where they wrapped up their season. Of course, we previewed this sectional and said this might have been one of the more competitive, difficult sectionals to try to get out of. We weren't sure what to expect. With this, there was a lot of teams that had a great shot at being able to win this thing, right? When we looked at it record-wise, we thought, well, what does it mean if a team like Riverside, for example, they racked up a lot of wins, but their schedule wasn't really great, right? They were 21-1 going into that sectional. University, which Monrovia drew in the opening round, they came in at, I believe, 15-8 on the season, playing a little bit more, difficult schedule. And unfortunately for Monrovia, that was just too much for them. And they dropped a tough contest to the Blazers there. Kind of like what you talked about, it was kind of a season of transition for the Bulldogs. You get, the longtime, probably surefire Hall of Famer at some point, in Coach Barber to come in, longtime coach there at Danville. He comes in and, it's not really his, I hate to say like his guys, because it's not like it's a college thing where you can go out and just build your roster, but, he hasn't coached these kids, he hasn't taught them his system and, that kind of thing. And so you come in and like we said, he plays a pretty short bench. If you look at the statistics for Monrovia throughout the season, a lot of times he was only playing 6 guys, maybe sometimes 7. And it looked like he had a pretty heavy senior class. So he's graduating his top 3 scorers on the season. Hayden Najera, Clay Tharp, and Hudson McLeod were all seniors, all averaging double digits, per game. And so it's going to be interesting to see where the Bulldogs go from here. Is there some youth in that system that's going to be able to come up and step in and, play some key, roles on the varsity team next year? We'll see, but again, when you look at overall first year coach coming in 14-9, again, up and down season, overall. But again, you just kind of build off the little things and hopefully you get a year under your belt. You get into the, kind of the youth system a little bit. You work with your JV and your junior high coaches, and hopefully you can kind of help build a little bit more on that. But yeah, that was a tough draw there for the Bulldogs, and kind of a rough way to end it there playing University. But overall, I think you try to walk away with some positives and look towards building toward the future there. So.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the running theme here for the next couple schools. Moving on to like the southwest side of Indianapolis, Beech Grove, 9-17, the third team that went 2-3 in our conference. What can you say about that? It was a rough haul for Coach Sanders. Started off pretty good, starting off with a 4-1 record, and very quickly after the next 3 games, back to 4-4, beat Richmond. And then lost to Buckeye, lost to North Decatur, lost to Chittard, lost to Monrovia, lost to Lawrence Central, lost to Rebuff, lost to Southport. And when you have that many losses right in a row, like what was that, 7? You're on that point of losing your team. It's like, Coach, we're doing everything we can. We're 5 and what would that be, like 11 at that time? Like, like what do we need to do, Coach? And somehow Sanders got them back up. Willing to play, won another 3, and then bam, they another 5-game losing streak there. They end up being able to get a win in sectionals against Indian Creek, and then end up losing to Roncalli. And Roncalli is playing in the semi-state right now versus Silver Creek. So really good team to lose to. It's never fun to lose, but knowing that the team that beat you is regional champions and might be the favorite to win semi-state. So, the players returning are the players that like really stood out this year. AJ Amos, the junior guard, averaging 13.5 points. Sophomore Bishop Moore, averaging 12.6 points. Sophomore Nate Ruth, averaged 9.5 points. Field goal percentage, junior Adris Armstrong, 50%. Once again, Amos, 48%. Bishop Moore, 48%. Are you hearing something here, Coach? Sophomore, junior, sophomore. Not a lot of seniors really playing a lot of contribution to this team. I'm not trying to take anything away from Flavis Tyler or anybody like that, but it seems like a lot of sophomores, a lot of juniors were the key leaders, stat-wise at least, on this team. So we'll see. We'll see what Coach Sanders can do in this offseason, getting all those guys back, all those guys with a lot of experience, and hopefully can bring something next year. And like you said, really get with them, really pump them up. I know Bishop Moore is probably on his way to play baseball already. Have a 3-sport athlete who happens to be one of your best basketball players too. That's got to be hard for a coach. I know it's hard for Coach Strine. It's hard for Coach Spence when some of your top players are playing basketball or they're playing another sport. I mean, I guess we're talking about basketball, but playing football or playing baseball. But I think Bishop Moore can handle it. Great family, pretty athletic kids there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, you talked about that stretch that the Hornets had. And, boy, when you look at the season that Indian Creek had, and I've been there, this was a rough year. No way around it. Unfortunately for Coach Glenser, you lose 14 in a row to end the season. And so it's one of those things where – you talk about losing a team, and hopefully you don't have, too much turmoil in the program or in the community. I don't know what the expectations were for this team this year. Obviously I no one's going to go in saying, we want to be 3-20 on the season, but if it's one of those things where you look at the roster, kind of like what you were saying with Beech Grove, you got Carter Cooley, who's your stud senior, averaging about 15 a game. Other than that, you're going to have a lot coming back, and you hope maybe that you got some stuff again in that pipeline of middle school kids that are coming through, or maybe some kids that contributed with the JV program this year. We don't know exactly, if they were deep on that end, maybe a little bit, who knows? But again, what you really have to do with something like this is just put it behind you and really try to build in the off season, right? And try to get some momentum, get kids in the gym, get them working, get your summertime stuff in, and really just try to put this season behind you. Use it for motivation, do whatever you need to do for it. But yeah, going into sectionals, dropping that matchup to the Hornets, ended the season for the Braves, who again, I don't know, I would assume they're probably in the same boat as some of these other schools where they're, sharing athletes with other programs and that kind of thing. And I'm sure that makes it difficult to get some traction, but hopefully they can kind of right the ship and turn things around, because there's a lot of talent in that school. We've seen that in a number of different sports. So sometimes you just have these years, and again, you just try to learn from the adversity in it. And hopefully those guys can rebound and move forward next season and get back onto some winning basketball down there at Indian Creek for the Braves. So yeah, that kind of does it, for that. And like we said, when we take a look here at the Triton Central Tigers, man, they've been on a little bit of a run here. They had a really good, successful football season, and now the boys basketball and the girls basketball was real successful here. They had a pretty good run with volleyball, so it's a good time to be a Tiger out there in Farmland, that's for sure. And again, when you take a look at Mike, it's a team sport, and I want to make sure that I say that, when I took a look at what the Tigers have done with this boys basketball team, it is a team sport. But man, Eli Seago has just been phenomenal for these guys all year long, obviously. But some of the performances that he's put up here in the season, is just really kind of the stuff that you want from a stud. He's the guy that can put the team on the back and, get them through when maybe, the rest of the team is struggling, and you need that kind of kid on your team. So it's really fun to see what they have been able to do here in this postseason as they've advanced through sectionals. So.
Yeah, it's really important. I think every program has to have a kid like that. You always want to make it a team. You want everyone to do like their role, and they all have responsibilities on the court. But at the end of the day, you need someone to make a basket. And whether it's Drew Metallic or whether it's Fuego, you have to have somebody that you can go, I'm going to get the ball in his hands, and he's going to win it for us. And he seems like to be one of those kids. Coach, I know we're about to wrap things up, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think we do need to talk, and because we've mentioned it in the past. The Indy Star came out with an article talking about how the percentage of girls playing basketball has been on the decline since 2000. Remember what that stat was? Something about 38%?
Yeah, 39%. Yep.
Yeah. So what do you think, Coach? We've had many conversations. We know that Tri-West did not have enough girls to finish out with a JV team. Were you able to talk to other coaches around the conference or around our area that were having the same problems? And was anybody talking about a couple of reasons why they think that's going on?
Yeah, not specifically, one-on-one, but it's been a topic that I've seen discussed in various different forums online, social media pages, and things like that. And I think it's kind of a general consensus that it's a combination of a couple of things that you and I have talked about before, whether it's burnout from the amount of time that we put these kids into. Summer ball and off season and private workouts and, all that stuff. There's certainly, that aspect to it. I also think too, that it kind of boils down to something that I think you brought up this morning in a conversation that we were talking about. Let's just be honest that unfortunately a lot of kids don't want to have to work their way into playing varsity basketball these days. It's one of those things where we see a lot of kids that come in, and whether it's a sense of entitlement or just feeling that they deserve to be varsity players from the jump, that they don't want to bide their time playing JV ball. And that work ethic type mentality, it seems to be declining. And if you just tell me, you're going to be a JV player as a sophomore, it's like, well, then I'm not going to play. You certainly see that as well. So, and I think too that no matter how much we say, and put out statistics that show that, colleges want well-rounded athletes that play multiple sports, there's still this fighting tendency for specialization. And so kids who maybe were basketball was their second sport, maybe they're stud volleyball players, and they're just going to say, I'm not going to play basketball anymore to focus on volleyball type thing. And you see it in other sports as well. I think that's impacting it too. So I think a combination of a couple of different things there are what we're starting to see here with maybe some of the reasons why we see these declining numbers, especially on the girls' side, with basketball. So I don't know if there's an answer to it either, other than I know you had talked a little bit about, the concept of having to develop a winning program and getting kids to buy into that, wanting to be a part of that being enough to bring kids into the program and sacrifice, going through the practices and just being a part of the team, but maybe not, getting the number of minutes or playing time that they would want, but just knowing that they're a part of that, program. Maybe that's, the secret sauce there with that. I don't know. So, definitely, something to be maybe a little alarmed about, but it could also just be a little bit of a trend as well, a blip. Hopefully maybe you start to see those numbers rise up a little bit. I don't know if things like the transfer portal type thing that's happening, or if NIL does become a big thing. I mean, that's not really going to move the needle, I wouldn't think that much, but maybe you will start to see the pendulum swing back the other way. It'll be interesting to see there. So yeah. Any closing thoughts on that?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up really well. I saw that the WNBA looks like they finally got their CBA figured out. So I think that's like verbally they've agreed on stuff, so we can see a lot of women back on the basketball courts, and hopefully here in Indiana with Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham and everybody doing so well. Hopefully that spurs some numbers. But I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, you have 5 kids that can play. And I know there's people that sub in, but when you have 9 through 12, only 5 girls get to be on that court. And, if you feel like you're getting behind in your class, you can go someplace else, or you can do something else to fulfill that. Basketball is super hard. It's gotten so technical and so speed driven, and you've got to be able to do so many different things well on the court. It's hard, the practices are hard, and getting hit and picked, falling down to the ground and getting the ball, that's all hard. Boys, girls, it doesn't matter, whereas golf, you're out there and you're enjoying the weather and you can hit a ball. Tennis, you're enjoying the weather, you get a good sweat on, but you're hitting the ball across the court. A lot of schools don't cut there. You can be like 25th on the team and you still go out and just have fun, right?
Yep.
Basketball's not that way. And you're in a gym and you have a lot of people watching you, criticizing you, yelling at refs, yelling at coaches. It's kind of like a toxic environment depending on where you go. Where in some of these other sports, like soccer, fans might be yelling, but you're far enough away that you don't really hear them.
Right.
Basketball, it is right on top of you. And I think kids nowadays, I hate to be that old guy who says stuff like that, but I think there are some of them who cannot take criticism very well, and when you're on that free throw line, it's everybody staring at you, and you miss that free throw. That can be crushing. You might be down by 35 points, but all is you missed that free throw. You know what I'm saying? It had no bearing on the game necessarily, but that's the one thing that your mom and dad can go, oh, you almost scored a point. And it's like, yeah, I suck. I can't even score a point, Mom. Yeah. So, basketball's tough, and you never know what's going to happen with kids and what other sports are happening. I think we talked about the rise of girls wrestling. That's going to take a lot of those tough-minded girls out. Swimming is also a really big sport that happens.
Flag
in the
football.
time too. Flag football. Absolutely. And then, those sports that we never really talk about, like lacrosse. That's taken a lot of girls too. And then when you're talking about these small schools, there's so many options. And if you don't feel a lot of success, and if it's not really something that you want to do anymore, you have plenty of other opportunities and other things to do in life that you can find joy in. And sometimes basketball is really hard to find joy in it. So I think hopefully with that in life.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hopefully the Triton Central Tigers will find some joy Saturday morning, 10 a.m., semi-state against Parke Heritage down at Southport. If you're in and around the area and you have a chance to go down, obviously Southport Gym is always a lot of fun. I think there's going to be some great basketball there Saturday morning. We'll certainly be rooting on the Tigers and that community. It's probably a really fun and exciting time for them out there. So we wish them nothing but the best, and certainly be rooting them on. And hopefully they can get the W and keep this magical season going for the Tigers. So, all right. Well, with that, that'll wrap us up. So thank you guys as always. mind. And we will see you again next week for another episode.
I'm not the hero, I'm the storm they fear. Thunder in my veins, crystal clear. Walls trying to box me, I'm breaking through.
But to be the